Hey everyone, and welcome back to the old warrior corner with Cohen. Dragonflight is drawing near, and I've had beta access for a little while, being in and checking what has been changing for warriors. I don't like the spoilers of the leveling experience and how the zones look and everything, so I'm skipping that, but I'm very curious about how the gameplay will be for warriors on the different specs. So I thought today we could have a look at the abilities, what is changing, new abilities, abilities going away, changed abilities, etc. And then in the following videos we'll have a look at the talent trees and see how they feel, what is changing, what is possible to do in the 3 talent trees. So let's get right into it. We can start with the abilities that are more universal across the 3 specs. For instance, Execute. Execute is actually unchanged from Shadowlands. I will not talk too much about the unchanged ones, but I bring up Execute because there was an early data mining saying that Execute might be able to be used on targets above 80% health. This has not been implemented, so the whole condemn mechanic is gone for now. We will see what happens in the future, but as it is now, Execute is only being able to be used on low health targets. And you have Massacre on all 3 specs, so you can raise the threshold from 20% to 35%. And it's basically Execute. It's the way we are used to seeing it. Ignore Pain is still there for Prot, but it has been removed for both Fury and Arms. So we don't have that option anymore to spend the rage on Ignore Pain. Something like Shattering Throw has been redesigned a little bit. This is the talent tree for Fury. So it's here, so you can then choose whether you have Wrecking Throw or Shattering Throw. So basically Wrecking Throw is an instant cast, deals 5 times the damage, 6 times the damage, I guess, to absorb shields, 45-second cooldown, or you can take the Shattering Throw on a 3-minute cooldown. What changes is that you remove magical immunities. What this will mean, we will have to see. It's like spell reflection. It will work on some things and some things not, I assume. But since there is a 3-minute cooldown, it might be powerful. Shield block is unchanged for Prot, but it has been, let's say, slightly nerfed for Fury and for Arms. Slightly, it has been pretty much cut in half. There is only 1 charge on it, so there are not 2 charges. You block for 6 seconds, and there's a cooldown that you can lower with haste. But you cannot keep it up for, let's say, the 12 seconds that you could before. So if you're going to do this, if you're going to off tank when the tank is dead, you need a very fast reser to get them up again, so they can take over. Since you don't have Ignore Pain anymore either, you are going to be squishy if you try to do this in Dragonflight. I tried this a few times in dungeons and raids on Fury, and it worked. I mean, I had a macro that switched in a shield, and then you could shield block for 12 seconds, and then after the 12 seconds maybe you could have an Ignore Pain. It was a bit of trouble keeping threat because you're Fury, you're not Prot, but yeah. On the other hand, everyone has defensive stance, so 20% less damage. We might be able to macro this in somehow, so we can still do some off tanking if we want to. Shield Slam, same. What else? Spear of Bastion. Let's have a look at these AoE the lower bracket here. Let's say we have Spear of Bastion that is unchanged. If you were Kyrian in Shadowlands, it's basically unchanged now as well. You can buff it up. The duration can be higher, and crit damage can be higher. Instant damage can be higher. The rage generation can go from 20 to 40. If you don't want that one, you can take Thunderous Roar, which I guess is thought to replace Dragon Roar, because Dragon Roar is gone for all specs. It's yeah, it's a physical damage and a bleed, basically. And then you can buff it up as well. You can reduce the cooldown from 1.5 minutes to 1 minute, or you can increase the bleed effect, and this also increases the damage of all bleed effects by 15% at all times. This has some effects for, especially for arms, I would say, and Prot, but it might be for Fury as well. And then you have Avatar, and you can buff Avatar up by, when you activate Avatar, you cast something. It's like Signet. So you can do this one for single target. Now this is the Fury tree. It's a little bit different for arms. So Avatar and Recklessness casts each other, or Avatar casts Odin's Fury, which is a new thing for Fury. I will go into that. So that's nice. The Black Sheep kind of is Shockwave is also down here. They buffed the damage of Shockwave, but it's nowhere near any of the others yet. Unless maybe you take Sonic Boom. 350% increased damage will be okay. I think probably most tanks will then run with Thunderous Roar instead. And maybe Avatar. But we will see. There are some options to make. We will talk about that more in the talent tree videos as well. Spell Reflection is has changed a little bit. It's present for all specs. The big difference is that it doesn't stop working when you reflect a spell. It will mitigate damage for you for 5 seconds, regardless of if you reflect the first spell or not. So it doesn't stop. Same cooldown, same duration, yeah, and it gives you 20% magic damage mitigation, as before. And then we have Bladestorm and Ravager, let's say. We'll group those two together. So the way it was that you as arms you had Bladestorm, and then you could change it into Ravager. You could take Ravager as Prot. You could have Bladestorm or Dragon Roar or Meat Cleaver as Fury. Now they have divided them up, so Bladestorm is only for arms, and instead you have Ravager on both Fury and Prot. So there is no Bladestorm anymore on Fury, which is, I don't know, maybe a little bit sad. We don't have any channeling at all now. And Ravager, 1.5 minute cooldown, you throw something down on the floor. It reminds me a lot, at least, of Spear of Bastion, which is on the same cooldown. Thunderous Roar on the same cooldown unless you lower it, which is also just a big slam of damage, and then some bleed. Same with Odin's Fury, but that is on a 45-second cooldown, so you can get 2 in there on the same cooldown as Ravager. It feels a little bit like these are very reminiscent of each other, let's say. And they do buff kind of each other a little bit, so there is some min-maxing to do there in in the burst windows. It does look like Fury is going to be more bursty than ever, but we also have a lot of tools to make the continuous AoE still be there. Alright, and then Avatar for all specs is here, 1.5 minute cooldown, and that also does different things for the different specs. We'll go into that. For Fury, we can go into Fury now. You can then boost your avatar with kind of signet. So it's either when you do avatar you get recklessness at reduced effectiveness and vice versa. Maybe even more powerful, especially in AoE, is that when you activate Avatar, if you take Titan's Torment, it casts Odin's Fury without reduced effectiveness. It just casts it. And you have Avatar active as well, so it actually is a kind of a buffed Odin's Fury. So that might be a bit powerful, I suppose, and it's on a 1.5 minute cooldown as well as, well, Odin's Fury is 45 seconds, so 2 of those, and then one of these, one of these, one of these. So there might be a little bit of AoE ability bloat there. Enraged Regen has changed a little bit. It is a little bit longer cooldown, I suppose, or it has gone up again to 2 minutes. It's the only thing that has really changed there. Recklessness is basically unchanged, but you yeah, it's unchanged actually. Even the rage generation is there. Enrage has changed a little bit. I made a separate video about Enrage, and I was a little bit worried that they would nerf it, and they have, but not as much as I thought they would. So if you haven't seen it, Enrage in Shadowlands now gives you 20% haste on your character sheet, even though it says 15. In the beta it gives you 17% instead of 15 as it says here. So it is nerfed by 3%. However, you have passive talents like Swift Strikes that increases the base haste by 2%, and then you have something here as well that it also increases it by 2% if you take Wild Strikes. So the overall haste when you are enraged will be about the same, but let's say the haste level when you're not enraged will be slightly higher, so you can even see it as a buff, I guess. But the difference between being not enraged and enraged will be lower, less of a difference, which is nice, I guess. You don't starve as much. Single-minded Fury is something that is a little bit controversial, maybe. I don't know, not many people like it. It's actually nerfed as a talent. It's down to 5% damage increase right now. But then you have all of these other things that kind of buffs you when you are having one-handed weapons. So they're focusing on auto-attack damage, etc, etc. As I said, Dragon Roar is completely removed from all specs. Onslaught is still here. They have kind of redesigned it, I suppose. It's still basically how it was. It hits harder than both Bloodthirst and Raging Blow, but it's on a pretty long cooldown. It generates rage, and you can buff it up by making it also enrage you. So it's like a medium cooldown filler that can also enrage you. Maybe the even bigger thing here is that enrage if you take Tenderize, it lasts 1 second longer overall. So it goes from 4 to 5 seconds, and that could possibly be very powerful. We will see. If you need it. It depends very much on your haste levels. What else do we have? Siege Breaker that we had in Shadowlands is completely removed. And that, with all of the ability bloat that we have here, I think is a good thing, because it was just one more button to hit. Reckless Abandon. Also made a separate video about that. I have some good news there. On the beta, the charge effect on Crushing Blow is gone. They even made a blue post about it. Now, it does say on the tooltip that it still charges. Okay, I can just briefly show you. Crushing Blow. Charge to an enemy and strike a mighty blow. But honestly, I trust the blue post more than the tooltip, because, well, tooltips are quite often not updated. But it's still the beta. They have a lot of time to do so. Other than that, Blood Bath that you get instead of Bloodthirst has a slightly lower cooldown. And Crushing Blow doesn't charge anymore, and the increased range is also gone. So you need to be in melee range. But it generates a little bit more rage. It goes from 24 to 28. So, I don't know. Not sure it's necessary, but it will be a good amount of rage you get from those. So when you go into the recklessness window, you will have massive amounts of rage. I talked about Odin's Fury already. Odin's Fury also has these buffs that you can put on them. Either you increase the auto attack speed, so you get kind of the old enrage back on that, but only during Odin's Fury window. That is, well, this is for 10 seconds, actually. Or you can get enraged by Odin's Fury and empower Raging Blow. That means that Raging Blow becomes Crushing Blow, actually, for 6 seconds. So you can just spam Crushing Blow after you do Odin's Fury. The interesting thing about Odin's Fury that we heard recently is that the extra damage, this physical damage over 4 seconds, counts as a bleed, or it's supposed to count as a bleed, which means that you can buff it with Thunderous Words as well. So that might make Thunderous Roar viable for Fury. I don't really know yet. The way it used to be early on the beta and in the alpha was that Thunderous Roar was for Prot and Arms, and Spear of Bastion was for Fury, basically. And everyone took Avatar. But we will see. Maybe it changes around a little bit now. So you have some options there. We have something here called Annihilator. So this removes Raging Blow. You cannot press Raging Blow anymore, but it buffs your auto attack damage and generates more rage. So it's basically a devastator for Raging Blow. I think it's supposed to be a way to make the rotation easier, and since it's auto attack buff damage and it's in line with Single-Minded Fury, I think they thought that this would be the way if you have one-handers. To get to Annihilator, you have to go through Storm of Swords, where you put a cooldown on both Whirlwind and Slam, and you can buff Slam up so it is actually viable, so it does a decent amount of damage. It does more damage than Bloodthirst, at least. Yeah. So I am not sure what they want us to do here. They remove Raging Blow, but then they kind of make Slam viable, so should you then lift in Slam and keep track of the 12-second cooldown on that, or I am not really sure. We also saw from the blue posts that you are supposed to be able to use Annihilator with two-handers. So you don't take these, and then you can have Annihilator with Titan's Grip. So they are right now looking into it. The way it looks now, it's very difficult to do that in the tree and make something viable from it, but we will see. The last thing I'm going to say about the Fury spec and the abilities is Sidearm, which could be a little bit tricky, maybe. Your auto attacks have a 20% chance to hurl weapons at your target and 3 other enemies in front of you. So when I tested it, it has a range of roughly 20 yards, and it is just random, it's 20% chance. So this could be very good for damage. It could also be a very big problem on fights like the Huntsman or something, where you want to CC something and you're not supposed to break the CC, and if they are too close and you hurl an axe on them, then they will break out of the CC. So be a little bit aware of this one. You don't have to take it. You can get past it anyway and take everything around it without actually going sidearm. So it's not a big problem just to lift it out of your loadout. So now we're switching to arms, and we are starting by having a look at Avatar. The only thing that changes is that it generates 10 rage instead of 20, I think it was before. You can buff it up by Blademaster's Torment. So you are when you throw Avatar or Bladestorm, you throw the other one at reduced effectiveness. Or you can do the same thing with Avatar and Colossus Smash or Warbreaker. It changes to Warbreaker if you have Warbreaker on. Other than that, Skull Splitter is back, but it's on a 30-second cooldown now, and it does a little more damage, and it generates 30 rage instead of 20 from before. Not a huge change. Rend is also back. The only difference is that you don't get any increased crit damage from your rended targets on arms. But on the other hand, you can spread rend with Blood and Thunder. This one is right now bugged on the beta, but hopefully it will be fixed. So up to 5 nearby targets can be spread to have rend as well. So you will be more like a Death Knight now, I suppose, spreading your diseases around. Colossus Smash, it is slightly nerfed. It used to be 35% damage increase on smash targets, but it's now 30. The same for Warbreaker. Overpower is a little bit. Where do we have Overpower? Here. So it increases the damage of your next Mortal Strike as it did before, but it also increases damage on your next cleave by 20%, stacking up to 2 times. So they added that. Sweeping Strikes is the same as before, and it's still on the global cooldown, which when people have tested it in dungeons and things, it feels a little bit clunky still, as it did before. It's still going to be very good on 2-target cleave, 3-target cleave, well, 2-target cleave I guess. And I think that arms is still going to be the king of 2-target cleave, at least among the warriors. Then we have Tactician. Where do we have the Tactician? Here. It's a slightly higher chance per rage spent to reset the cooldown on Overpower than it used to be. It has been buffed a little bit. Cleave is over here. It is possible to lower the cooldown with this follow-up talent. So you can get down to quite low cooldown values for Cleave. Then we have some new interesting choices that we haven't really... Well, we've seen them before, but not for a while. So like Fatality, your mortal strikes and cleaves against enemies above 30% health have a high chance to apply Fatal Mark. When an enemy falls below the 30% health, your next execute inflicts an additional something damage per stack. Right now this is quite a lot, so when you are, especially if you have a long fight before you get to the 30% mark and then you hit your execute, it's going to hit like a truck. So this has been present before in a previous expansion. Don't remember exactly what it was called then. Juggernaut is back. It is limited though. Juggernaut in Legion was like 99 times or something you could stack it up to, but it's limited to 15 times. So you increase the damage of execute, and you need to refresh it at least every 12 seconds. So that gives execute a lot of damage for arms. You have bloodletting. Where is that? Here. So bleed effects last longer and have higher crit chance. I don't know how exciting that is, but it's something new. And Battle Lord, your overpower has 25% chance to reset the cooldown of Mortal Strike and Cleave, and reduce the rage cost by 10. So that could be a big thing actually. Now for Prot, there are actually a lot of things happening. There are some new things coming. The major change is that pretty much everything that we know to be Prot Warrior is still here, but you're able to take much more of it at the same time. So it will probably feel a little bit more like Battle for Azeroth than Shadowlands, because what they did there was that they had a lot of things that made Prot Warrior work well in BFA, and then they jumbled around the talent tree for Shadowlands, so they locked you out of things that you kind of needed in order for the spec to feel good. And then it has been on the bottom of the popularity list for the entirety of Shadowlands. It does look very promising for Dragonflight though. Starting with like Ignore Pain, it looks like it has been buffed a little bit in mitigation values from before. Demo Shout has that hasn't really changed much, but the rage generation is a little bit lower with Booming Voice. Here is Booming Voice, so it's 30 rage instead of 40 like it was before. Very minor change. Shield Wall is down to 40% damage mitigation from 50. Slight nerf, but it's okay. And Shockwave for Prot. If you compare it to Shadowlands, it will do a lot more damage, but whether the damage is any useful, I'm not sure. Will it do enough threat? Because the threat generation isn't increased for Shockwave, so maybe it will be better for sure. My only fear is that you won't take Shockwave at all. You take like Thunderous Roar instead, but we will see. But you can also like supercharge it with these talents, so it does much more damage, or it has a lower cooldown if you hit a lot of mobs. And then we have, let's see, where is Vanguard? It is here. Vanguard has changed a little bit. The damage mitigation is down from 15% to 5%. Stamina increase is down from 45% to 30%, and the armor that you get from strength is down to 70%, down from 100. On the other hand, we have defensive stance now that mitigates an extra 20% damage. So in this case you would mitigate 25% damage instead of 15, which that extra 10% would probably make up for the stamina and armor being a little bit lower. So thinking about it, it might actually make us a little bit more hardy for let's say magic damage, because it's all damage taken that is reduced, and the armor is slightly less, and that is only for like physical damage. A lot of things are the same. Ravager is changed. It is up from a 45-second cooldown to a 1.5 minute cooldown, and it hits a lot harder. You can make it into having 2 charges. Where is that? Here. But you get reduced damage by 40%, so then your total Ravager damage would be 120% instead of 100. You have to cast it twice. Now this can be very good if you need to generate a lot of threat on a shorter cooldown, let's say, because you have 2 charges, and the recharge time is 1.5 minutes. You can also make it so that it deals a little bit more damage if it kills enemies. I'm not sure how valid this is going to be when you tank dungeons or raids, but we will see. And then we have Unstoppable Force that is hidden behind Avatar, and that has been buffed. It not only increases the damage of Thunderclap, but also Shockwave by 50%, and reduces the cooldown of Thunderclap by 50% as well. So the damage modifier is up from 30, and it also includes Shockwave now. The alternative is that you, when you activate Avatar or Shield Wall, cast the other one, so like a Signet there, but for Shield Wall, more defensive option. This is very aggressive. Never Surrender, where you got more ignore pain value the lower you are on health, is right now removed completely. Best Served Cold here has been nerfed a bit. So it is now 10% more damage, or 20 if you have a proc, so it is free. Previously it was 20 and 50%. So let's say you will be more bursty in damage, but they removed a little bit of the damage outside of the cooldown windows, I suppose, for revenge then. So now we can move into some of the new things. There are so many things here, but I will just go over the some of the new things. Let's say these, you can take many more of these at the same time now than you could in Shadowlands, so it's quite exciting to see that you can have all of these at the same time. Important to say also is that I haven't leveled the character fully, so I don't have all the talent points, so you will have more talent points here. Shield Charge is a pretty big thing. It's on a 45-second cooldown. It's a charge, but it's an AoE charge, so you charge in and hit all enemies within 10 yards, stuns the primary target for 4 seconds, and you generate 20 rage. This is a really nice opener. If you're in a dungeon, this should be up every pull. You can also buff it up quite nicely with like Reprisal. So they named it Champion's Bulwark here. So you get 20% increased damage, you are granted shield block, a revenge proc, and an additional 20 rage. So charging in with this is kind of like a supercharged Reprisal, because, well, this is a little bit nerfed maybe. It's basically the same, but you also have the shield charge that hits a lot of mobs, or you can take battering ram. Crit chance and critical strike damage increased, and your auto attack speed is increased for 20 seconds. Champion's Bulwark was this one. We have Thunderlord back. So Thunderlord was legendary. So you hit mobs with Thunderclap and then it reduces the cooldown of Demoralizing Shout. You can do it at a maximum of 3 seconds now, which is fine, I think. So this helps you keep Demoralizing Shout up much more. That has also been one of the issues, that you either go with Reprisal or Thunderlord, and you, at least in dungeons, it was very good if you could have both. So now you can. Show of Force is back. This was a conduit, I suppose. So revenge damage is increased, and also your next Thunderclap when you have hit your revenge. You can choose them between Show of Force and Sudden Death, actually. So now you have Sudden Death for Prot. And that makes Execute also cost no rage. That is very nice. You can build into an Execute tank, basically, because you have a lot of different things that you can put into here. So you are actually you do quite nice damage in the Execute phase. What else do we have? Unbreakable Will. So these two have also been like legendary powers, or they come from something else. You can select between these two, where you either get an additional charge on Shield Wall, and then it spreads 50% of it, meaning a 20% damage mitigation to all party members in your party, not your raid. Or you can go for Impenetrable Wall, where you reduce the remaining cooldown of Shield Wall with your Shield Slam. Both of them are very effective, and but you have to choose between these two. There are so many things here. Enduring Defenses is something that might be nice. You select between that, which is a very defensive choice. Well, shield block lasts longer, 2 seconds. Or you have Massacre, where Execute is now usable on 25%, 35% health targets. So this, together with everything else that has to do with Execute, you can buff it up a little bit more. You can basically become like an Execute tank, which could be really good on like single target boss fights. Violent Outburst. This is something new. I think. I don't remember seeing it before. Consuming 30 rage grants a stack of Seeing Red, and then when you have 8 stacks, you go into Violent Outburst, and then your next Shield Slam or Thunderclap is 200% more effective, and then also grants you Ignore Pain. So it's a little bit, I don't know, not random, but you can't really hit the ability since it's a passive, so it triggers sometimes. It might be good for boss fights. I am not sure how good it will be for let's say dungeons. Battle-Scarred Veteran. This is quite nice. When you go under 30% health, you get basically an 80% mitigation buff or shield or whatever you want to call it for 8 seconds, and the healing that you receive from outside sources or even the ones that you have is increased by 100%. Has a 3-minute cooldown though, internally. But we haven't had anything kind of like this for some time. We've seen it before, but it was some time ago. And booming voice is basically the same as it has been before. Some other new things. We have, well, this is returning. Rage generation increased by 50% during last stand on your unnerving focus. This was Conduit, I think. Brace for impact. When you use shield slam, you increase the damage of your next shield slam, and then it stacks up to 5 times. Also, it increases the amount of damage that you block, which is kind of nice. You can boost your ignore pain that you currently have by dealing damage with brutal vitality, or you have fueled by violence, where you're healed for the damage dealt by deep wounds, which at least previously wasn't really a big thing, but maybe it will be worth taking. And then we have some interesting things here. So you deal damage when you block, so it's shield spike, basically. You generate a lot of threat. Could be good early in the expansion, maybe, if you have some overpowered classes in your raid or your dungeon group. This one I think is quite interesting. You are able to block spells for 20 seconds. So your block extends to magic spells, basically, for 20 seconds on a 1.5 minute cooldown. No, this sounds way overpowered, but we will see. Maybe it doesn't apply to like bosses or something like that, so we will see. Yeah, so that was basically it. It was a little bit of a long video, but there are a lot of changes. Now, gameplay wise, I would say for Fury, the short rotation will be roughly the same, I think. If you look at the relative power between the abilities, it's basically the same as before. You have a lot of AoE cooldowns on Fury. You have a lot of cooldowns in general, so that might be a little bit bloaty, and then you have like Onslaught, and maybe Slam is viable, and then it feels like there could be a lot of abilities for Fury, and maybe too much. They are aware of it at Blizzard though, so they've posted in the blue post that they are looking into this kind of ability bloat that Fury right now has. The arms tree is looking really nice. So, and the gameplay will be, I think, roughly the same. You will not be able to use Ravager, but you have your Blade Storm at least. And you will also be able to take Thunderous Roar as arms as well. Of course, you can take Spear of Bastion as well, but this bleed damage increase will be massive because you can have Rend on your arms tree, and then you spread it around with Blood and Thunder. So that will deal massive amounts of damage on AoE as well. So I would say that Fury will be a little bit more AoE bursty than before, and arms will probably be a little bit more consistent in their AoE, since they have bleed. So maybe they will meet somewhere in the middle now. It used to be that arms was the bursty one, and Fury was the consistent AoE one. So we will see. And then for Prot, I mean, I'm excited. We get everything we need back, and then some. So we have a lot of choices. We can go with this new shield charge thing, which sounds really fun in dungeons. And there are so many things to try out on Prot. I think it's well, for me at least, it's a little bit untested yet. So it sounds very nice, and when you just try to run around doing damage with Prot, it feels really good. So I think that was it for the ability part, and I'll see you again next time when we're looking at the talent trees.